1945. The war was finally over. The bombs had gone silent, but Britain's roads were still empty. People walked, bicycles groaned, but cars, they had disappeared. Then one morning, a shining new car drove past, chrome glowing, engine purring like hope itself. The whole street froze. In that moment, Britain felt alive again. And if you grew up hearing these stories, this will touch your nostalgia like nothing else. Today, we're diving into the iconic cars that brought post-war Britain back to life, the machines that made a nation dream again. Morris Minor, 1948. Picture Alec Isagonis in his drafty shed, sketching curves on the back of cigarette packets. "Make it friendly," he said, "like a face you'd trust with your grandmother." And by God, he did it. The Miner arrived like a warm hug after years of cold shoulders. Curved like your mother's teapot. Reliable as the 815 to Paddington. 358 pounds. 6 months' wages if you were lucky enough to have wages, but families saved halfpennies in OXO tins for 2 years. Kids gave up sweets. Mothers darned socks until they were more darn than sock. Why? Because when you turned that key and heard her gentle cough into life, you weren't just starting an engine, you were starting life again. First family holiday since the blackouts. Margate, here we come. Luggage tied to the roof with washing line. Thermos flask rattling. Children singing 10 green bottles for the 70th time. Jaguar XK 120, 1948. The war ended. Rationing continued. Then William Lyons walked into Earl's Court with this: 120 miles per hour when most family cars barely managed 50. Curves that made grown men weep. Chrome that reflected dreams. Clark Gable ordered one sight unseen. Frank Sinatra serenaded them in nightclub songs. Your local doctor sold his practice just to afford the down payment. Long bonnets stretching into tomorrow. Wire wheels catching sunlight like captured promises. Exhaust note that sounded like angels gargling the finest whiskey. You didn't drive an XK 120. You conducted it through country lanes, while lesser mortals pulled over just to watch you pass. Remember Tommy Fletcher, garage owner, saved for 7 years, bought a used one in 1955, first Sunday drive, pulled up outside the Crown and Anchor, engine still running. Not showing off, mind. Just wanted everyone to hear that magnificent growl. Conversations stopped. Wives stared. Husbands pretended they weren't impressed. Of course they were. We all were, because in post-war Britain, beauty like that was rarer than decent sausages. Land Rover Series Wheat, 1948. Born from Spitfire scraps in a Warwickshire barn. The Wilkes brothers looked at leftover aluminum and thought, right, let's build something that'll outlast civilization itself. No doors, because doors were for softies. No heater, because heating was for drawing rooms. No comfort, because comfort was, well, not very British, was it? Canvas roof that leaked exactly where you were sitting. Gearbox that required the strength of a dock worker and the patience of a saint. But this magnificent beast delivered babies in Welsh snowstorms, pulled hay carts through Hampshire mud, carried country doctors to remote farms where the only light was candle fire and prayer. Dr. Williams from Llanfairpwll drove his for 37 years. Same one. Never failed him once. Engine finally seized in 1985. He had it bronzed and put in his garden. Because when the world ends, there'll be cockroaches, Her Majesty's corgis, and Land Rovers. Everything else is just temporary. Austin. A 30, 1951. Small as a biscuit tin, determined as Churchill's bulldog. The A30 was Britain's cheeky answer to what if we made a car that fits in our garage and our budget. £481. Still a fortune, but achievable if you skip the pub for 18 months. Which nobody did, obviously. Perfect for newly married couples whose biggest decision was whether to spend honeymoon money on petrol or proper meals. But here's the secret nobody mentions. On twisty Cotswold lanes, this pocket rocket could embarrass cars twice its price. Why? Weighed about as much as a Sunday roast, handled like it was reading your mind. Young Eddie Morrison drove his from London to Edinburgh in 1953. On a bet, £10 says you can't make it in under 12 hours. Arrived with frozen fingers, chattering teeth, and the biggest grin Lancashire had ever seen. Stories lasted 40 years. Triumph. TR2, 1953. Saturday morning, 1954. You're 23. You've got £2 in your pocket, and your TR2's sitting outside like Christmas morning, wrapped in British racing green top down, because weather's for wimps. Scarf flying, because style matters. Radio crackling with rock around the clock, because Elvis exists and life is good destination. Who bloody cares? You're not going somewhere. You're going everywhere. Brighton Beach for fish and chips, Cotswold pub for warm beer, and cold looks from locals. Maybe even calling on that redhead from the typing pool who finally said yes. 2 seats? Technically. But you absolutely squeezed in half the neighbourhood cricket team, knees around your ears, elbows in ribs. Everyone singing Summer Holiday, completely off key at the top of their lungs. Perfect? Not remotely perfect? Absolutely bloody perfect. Because after years of make do and mend, this was make do and live. Rover P4, Cyclops, 1949. That single headlight, staring at you like a disapproving headmaster who'd caught you smoking behind the cricket pavilion. But don't let the stern expression fool you, old boy. This was the motor for men who wore 3-piece suits to buy newspapers, who said, rather, unironically, who secretly dreamed of racing at Brooklyn's leather seats that smelled like pipe tobacco, Old Spice, and quiet dignity. Dashboard wood, polished to mirror brightness by craftsmen who took pride Sunday, driven sedately to morning service, prayer book on passenger seat. Tuesday, driven rather less sedately to Goodwood races, form guide hidden under seat cushion. Just popping to see Cousin Nigel about his rheumatism, dear. Course you were, and if Cousin Nigel happened to own racehorses, pure coincidence. Other cars shouted their presence. The P4 simply cleared its throat, politely. Respect? Instant. Questions? None asked. Ford Consul, 1951. Someone at Fort Dagenham looked across the Atlantic and thought, right, let's give the Brits a proper taste of that. Enter the Consul. Chrome bumpers that could blind low-flying aircraft. White-wall tyres that screamed, Hollywood has arrived. Heater that actually worked in Britain. In 1951, basically witchcraft. Remember the first time you saw one? Saturday afternoon outside Woolworths. Crowd gathering like someone famous had died, which, in a way, someone had. The old boring Britain. Pull up outside the Dog and Duck. Engines still running. Not because you were showing off, perish the thought. You just wanted everyone within 3 counties to hear that V6 purring like Benny Goodman's clarinet. Inside felt like a Mayfair gentleman's club. Outside looked like Sunset Boulevard had eloped with Surrey. Subtle, about as subtle as fireworks in a funeral parlor. Magnificent, oh yes, absolutely, ridiculously magnificent. MGTF, 1953. This wasn't transportation. This was courtship made mobile. Swoopy fenders like a lady's evening glove, wire wheels catching afternoon sunlight like expensive jewelry. Exhaust note, humming melodies Sinatra would envy. Perfect for Saturday afternoon drives to absolutely nowhere with someone absolutely perfect. Wicker picnic basket, secured with leather straps. Thermos flask, filled with proper tea. Route plan through villages with names like Little Snodsworth and Much Fondling Top. Dropped because optimism conquers weather. Her scarf, streaming behind like victory banners. Your heart, hammering like you'd discovered treasure. Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn, 1949. Right? Let's be honest. 99.9% of us dreamed about it. 0.1% actually owned one. Every inch was hand-stitched leather. Every dashboard polished wood. Every door closed with a whisper, like it was tiptoeing through an English courtroom. Saw one glide past the village green. Everything stopped. Tools down. Conversations paused. Even children pressed their noses to the windows, silently mesmerized. You didn't just see it, you felt it, like it was a living, breathing promise of something better. These weren't just cars, they were hope wrapped in steel. First proper family holiday since 1938. Young couples discovering winding country lanes, veterans remembering what they'd fought for. The smell of fresh leather, warm oil, and freedom in the air. Broke down, fixed with coat hangers, bobby pins, and a few words that would make sailors blush. Rusted? We called it character. Too small? We squeezed in anyway. Every trip, every ride was a reminder. This car carried more than passengers. It carried dreams, laughter, and a Britain ready to live again.